Hello, my name is Antonio Cortez, and I will be presenting my final project for EDSC 320. I will be reviewing the film Back to the Future, directed by Robert Zemeckis and produced by Bob Gale and Neil Canton. In this presentation, I will go over the main character, Marty McFly, and how he develops as an adolescent within the film. Table of contents. Throughout the presentation, I will give a brief review of the movie, introduce Marty McFly and who he is, go over some elements of analysis, and analyze context and areas, while also discussing the main issue that Marty McFly deals with in the movie, and determine if Marty McFly is a typical adolescent. Back to the Future. Marty McFly is a troubled teenager who must travel back in time to help save his friend Doc Brown. Once in the past, Marty must be careful of not altering the timeline so that he and his siblings are born. So, in 1985, Marty McFly is helping his friend Doc Brown film a video of his DeLorean time machine. Doc Brown developed the DeLorean time machine with the use of plutonium. However, Doc Brown stole the plutonium from terrorists, and once they found out about how he misused their plutonium, they planned their revenge against him. While filming the video, Doc Brown is shot, and Marty is quickly made to go back in time in order to save Doc Brown, and while doing so, he must be careful that he does not change anything, or else he may be at risk of never being born. Marty McFly. Marty McFly is a 17-year-old from Hill Valley, California. He has a troubled home life, especially since his mom is a depressed alcoholic and his dad is considered a pushover. Marty does not spend too much time at home, and instead spends most of his day with his band, the Pinheads, his girlfriend Jennifer Parker, and his friend Doc Brown. Elements of analysis. The main context that I will be going over is family. Marty is embarrassed by his parents since they are not seen as successful and often describes himself as trying to not be like them. The two areas of psychosocial development that I will be going over are identity and intimacy. Because of his strained relationship with his family, Marty is having trouble creating his self-identity. He often says that he does not want to be like his parents, and he questions his identity, especially when others know how his family is and do not show him respect. The other area that I will analyze is intimacy. Marty is currently in an intimate relationship with his girlfriend Jennifer, and throughout the movie we see how they both care for each other and both support each other. We also see how this relationship develops, especially while Marty is back in time in 1955. Context. Marty is not close with his parents because of their issues. As stated before, his dad is described as a pushover. Since high school, George McFly, Marty's dad, has been bullied and tormented by Biff. Now, as adults, Biff is still taking advantage of George McFly, especially since Biff is George's supervisor. In addition to this, we also see how Marty's mom is going through a depression and is abusing alcohol. Marty sees this and is obviously not okay with it. We also see how Marty's mom does not like Marty's girlfriend Jennifer, and how he questions their relationship and does not like them being together. Because of the strained relationship between Marty and his parents, he is going through a crisis. As described in the textbook, we can see how Marty is showing signs of negative effects because of the marital conflict between his parents. We see this because he is not often home and he is often late to class, as we see in the scene where Strickland gives him his fourth tardy, and he is also self-conscious of his decisions and spending time with his friend Doc Brown. Identity. As previously stated, Marty is having a tough time finding his self-identity. Because of the nature of his family, he does not want to be like them. We see that his brother and sister are not very confident, just like their parents. In one of the scenes in the movie, we see how Marty is discussing the idea of sending a CD of his band to a local record label. However, he questions this idea and says that he would be no good and that they would reject him on spot. We also see how Marty is going through an identity crisis because of the notoriety that his family has. We see this in the scene where Principal Strickland catches him outside of class when he is late. He describes Marty as a slacker and says that he is just like his father. This makes Marty feel that he will not amount to anything, especially since people in his town remind him of how his family is. In the textbook, we see how an adolescent's self-esteem is developed by the nature of the relationship with their parents. Since Marty is not too close to his parents, he is often battling with self-esteem and questions his ideas. Intimacy. Throughout the film, we see how Marty McFly is in an intimate relationship with his girlfriend Jennifer. We see how they are both very supportive of each other and often think of one another in a positive light. At the beginning of the film, we see how Marty's girlfriend Jennifer helps him sneak into class and make sure that he is not caught by Strickland. Although they are caught by Principal Strickland, it is good to see that they have that intimate relationship between them. We also see in a later scene that Jennifer has revealed that she loves Marty McFly, and Marty, we may assume, has the same feelings for her as well. This is typical in adolescents of their age. Marty McFly and Jennifer are both 17. Therefore, they are at the age where they are now engaging in intimate relationships and have a deeper connection to one another. So, what is the main issue that Marty McFly is facing? The main issue is that he has to travel back in time in order to save his friend Doc and warn him that in the future he may be in trouble because of his plans to create the DeLorean time machine. However, Marty must be careful because if he says too much, the timeline will be altered and this may lead to Marty never being born. We also see how, while in the past in 1955, Marty must avoid his parents and make sure that they still fall in love with each other so that he and his siblings are born. So, is Marty a typical adolescent? Adolescents nowadays can relate with Marty through three main factors. Marty struggles with identity. Since Marty is 17, he is at the age where he is questioning his future and wondering what he will do after high school and once he moves on to the real world. He does not want to be like his parents, since we know that they're not very confident and they're constantly at turmoil. We also see that his siblings are not as confident as well, so he wants to make sure that he creates a better life for himself. Another way that adolescents can relate to Marty is how he is developing more intimate relationships. Once in later adolescence, teenagers will develop intimate relationships since they now have the ability to connect on a deeper level with others. Two ways that teenagers or adolescents nowadays cannot relate to Marty are because of his main issue. So, Marty McFly is tasked with going back in time to save his friend. However, we know that time travel is not possible, therefore, this makes him atypical. Also, the film is placed in 1985, and although it was released in 1985, we are now in 2021, so adolescents do not have the same worries as him since it is based in a different time period. Therefore, this makes Marty an atypical adolescent. Although he does show signs of being typical in the sense of having trouble with his self-identity and he is still under development, because of his main issue, he is not the typical adolescent. This is my work cited. Thank you for listening to my presentation.